Hello and welcome back. This is Sherry with Heart and Soulful in the studio today with a fun new video. It's a video that I had thought I had already done and I couldn't find it. And I had someone, I don't have a name because it was just a user and a number, left a comment the other day asking about my coffee dyed papers. And in the video that she watched, I had made reference to some busier patterned papers. And I'm thinking they were things, I'm not even sure exactly which one. I had to go back and actually look at the video. Things that had more going on in them. And I mentioned that I would maybe do a video of that. I thought I had, I could not find it to give to her as a reference. So I did find, though, in a video description, the inspiration for these papers. And it was a Mix It Up Marcy video. So I'll put her link down below because I did not come up with this technique, but I had done it on my own. And I loved the results so much that I had actually created a digital kit of some of my papers. So I'm going to see what I can come up with today. It's a lot of fun. It's really kind of just the luck of what you come up with as far as artistic wise, but there are a few things that you can do to kind of achieve a certain goal. So I want to show you what I did to get some different looks. So as far as supplies, you want to make sure you're working on a surface that is, you know, waterproof, because we're going to be introducing a lot of liquid and also doing some splashing. So you want to make sure, let me zoom in here a little bit. You want to make sure that you have a protected surface. I'm going to use a cookie tray that I can fit 2 pieces of paper into. We're going to be stacking with lots of liquid again. You want something maybe that doesn't have any writing or embossing on it, or that pattern might end up showing through on your bottom pieces. Not a big deal, because we're going to not be drying them in this pan. We're going to actually be, in my case anyway, I'm going to be drying them on the floor of my studio, laying them on some open garbage bags. That way, just the heat, I have heated flooring in the winter. And so that way it takes about 4 hours for my papers to dry, just laying them out on the floor. You can dry them outside, obviously. You could put these in the oven, because we're not going to be putting anything on there that can't go into the oven. So if you wanted to do maybe less layers or even as many, and then just dry them in a low heat oven and just keep an eye on them, you can do that too. So if you have sunshine outside and can lay them out if it's not windy, I'm covered in snow right now, so I can't do that. So the floor of my studio is going to have to work for me today. As far as paper, you can use any kind of paper. I just laid this on something that had liquid on it, I guess, so I've already got a mess probably in my tray. I'm going to use 3 different paper weights. I have 20-pound just cheap copy paper, and it's pretty thin. Then I have some 28-pound, which one of these is thicker? 28-pound paper, again, just copy paper, and then some 32-pound. So you can choose any weight you want. Obviously, the thinner the paper, the more delicate it's going to be once it's wet, to try to, you know, remove it from your tray and lay it somewhere to dry. So keeping that in mind, all paper, once you introduce liquid and then it dries, I find that the fibers do kind of shrink up together. So even though these were the 3 weights of paper that I used in my test, you can see that once they've been had liquid and then dried, I can't even tell really which one was which. This one might be a little thicker, but they're all thicker than they were before. So some of them are really, like this one's really pretty. Let's see, that's 2. These are really pretty thick, so I think this might have been the 32-pound. So again, whatever you have on hand will work. I have done videos where I use all different types of paper to do coffee staining. You can use this technique on those also, but if you're really wanting to see your pattern and you're going to be using something like map book pages or receipt pages or graph paper or any of that, you would also have that design. So for this, I'm just going to use some plain white paper. Okay, so I'll set that aside. Then the other things that you need for this technique are, I get these just some little plastic cups that I can reuse. And this one has some just instant coffee. So that's going to be kind of our base, just to get the coffee staining. You can buy just the cheapest brand of instant coffee because you want the one that dissolves. So you don't want regular coffee grounds, used coffee grounds for this technique because you want something that's going to dissolve. Okay, so we're going to use coffee grounds. The other thing I have in this one, these are all the same things that Marcy used, and then I'm adding some different things that I wanted to experiment with. So the other thing was, this is just Black India ink, any brand. This is Daler and Roney. Just Black India ink, and then it's just diluted. You want to use that. Then some lemon juice, and this there's even some pulp in here, which I don't really need. I could have strained it, but I didn't. But just some lemon juice. You can use even those concentrated lemon or lime, even just something citrus. So if you have one of these, you can use that. I did go ahead and dilute it a little bit. This one is with fresh lemons because I used up the lime. And then the other thing that you want is some salt. And I have a thing here of just coarse salt, kosher salt. So it's a little bit more coarse. That's going to give me a different design than if I use some fine salt. So this is pink Himalayan salt, but any just kind of fine salt. So this is a finer grain. And so that gives you just a little bit different of a pattern. So we're going to use salt, citrus, coffee, ink. And then the other things that I added where I had several of these Liquitex acrylic inks. So they're metallic, and so I thought it might be fun to do some metallics, and I did that in my last one. And for this batch, I'm actually mixing all of these with some water, just mixing them together. Before I had done some, I was just using maybe one color, and I've gone ahead and also put it, just diluted that mixture too, and I'm going to use that for some splatters. You can use it directly on your paper, but if you do, those have a dropper, you're going to get bigger blobs than just kind of spread out, more things like this, which is fine if that's the look you're going for. But if you want them splattered all over, then you would dilute it and then splatter them. So we're going to use that. Then the other thing that I added in, and I'm not sure if she did any of these or not, but I'm going to use some turmeric because of the color of that. So any kind of spices that you have that will dissolve, that have a color. I also have some saffron threads. We're going to clean these papers off afterwards, but because they're threads, it leaves a little bit different of a design than if it was a ground spice. So I'm going to use some of that. I also really like to use some matcha green tea. Again, this is instant, so it's not like the tea bags. I suppose you could make a cup of tea and then you would have that to splatter. But I was using this as a shaker and shaking it on, and then after they dry, we'll clean that off also. But it kind of gives you bigger, more color, intense colored spots where you sprinkle this. So one tip that I have, these are just little individual single serve packets that are instant, like the instant coffee. And I got these at Trader Joe's, but you can, wherever you can find them. In order to sprinkle these, sometimes I save some spice jars that have the little top on them, so I can put my green tea or whatever in here and then just use that as a shaker. But if you haven't done that, just take the little packet, and then I happen to have, if you have this, if you don't have this, you can actually maybe use a real thick pin that you can poke holes with. But I have this really small little hole punch. And so I just punched some holes without opening my packet. And that way now I have a little shaker. So I could actually maybe poke some right on the edge there, because then when I kind of open it up, and when I open it, I just mean kind of flatten that out. I'm not going to open the packet. Then I can just use that and sprinkle that without getting big splotches. So any kind of little packet that you have like that. The other thing that you might have, I found these and I have not used them yet, but I could do the same thing. They feel kind of thicker in there, so I would have to open them. But this is just Easter egg dye, and it just happens to be in little powder form. So I could use these. The other thing that I happen to have, and I purchased these a really long time ago, you can tell by the label, these are just powder pigments. So I have a few colors of those that I could use too, and they come in a little shaker. They have a little shaker top on the top. So I could use some of those if I want to introduce more color. So I think that's it for my supplies that we're going to use. Oh, the other thing that you might want, I have, this is just water that I'm cleaning my little brush in because I'm using this to make my splatters. If you don't have a brush like this, you can always take a regular brush maybe and clip some things out of it so it's kind of messier, and then that way you can kind of splash. A toothbrush, you could use that, but you know, you want to have a good area to work in, because if you go like this, you might have splashing everywhere, but this would give you a really nice fine splatter too. So I think that's all we need for tools. So let's just get going. On my first couple of pages, I'm just going to grab a couple, and these happen to be the real thin paper. So I think I'm going to start with the heavier paper because it's going to be in there the longest. So I think I'll start with some heavier paper on the bottom. Now, if your tray isn't big enough, you can just do this, and we're going to layer these. So just know that if you end up overlapping them like this, wherever the corners are, you may end up leaving that mark on the one before that. So that's just another look, and that's fine to do, because if you want to create a lot of interest, it's okay if these kind of, don't overlap completely. You'll just get much different designs. So I'm going to go ahead though and just use two that'll fit side by side, and that way I'll just be stacking them right on top of each other. So to start with, we're just going to put a layer of coffee, and mine kind of overlap a little bit. So I'm going to try to kind of make them not do that, only because when I go to take them out of this pan, they've been in here for a bit, and it might be a little trickier, taking the correct one off at a time so that you don't tear the edge of the paper. So I'm just going to put a little coffee. You could flip this over and get the other side, but it's kind of going to soak through, or let's just see, I'll go ahead and flip that. And you can splatter it, and that would leave a mark just by doing that, but I'm kind of coating this whole thing. And now every layer you're going to want to do a little different. Again, you can stack these, quite a few. I did that entire batch was one pan, all stacked together. So you can do a few if you want. If you don't want them bleeding onto each other too much and muddying your colors, your designs, because everything that you do, when you add another page to the top, it's going to seep through. But you'll be surprised how your design will kind of stay. It just kind of gives everything time to bleed out. Okay, so I have my little first layer, and then I just want to maybe take, and I just, even with this spoon, make some splatters. And this is going to leave me those larger dots. So maybe I want, a lot. So, this is the first bottom layer, and I don't have to do these two the same. But this just kind of gives you an idea. That's going to give me those darker blotches in there. The same thing, I can use this little brush if I want, and just kind of make some smaller splatters. And so that is what gives you that busier pattern that I was referring to in my earlier video. I think that she was talking about is how did I get them, some of these other patterns on here. So really just making some splatters. Now this is obviously diluted, so in the end this is going to come out more gray. Now if I wanted my splatters to be more prominent, you can see already that they kind of soak in and they're just small. If I wanted those to be, more in front, then I would have it less diluted or not diluted at all. So this is just going to give me kind of some gray background splatters, except for these larger areas. So I could, I could smooth those around if I wanted to. So this is my coffee brush, but I could, if I don't want those to be so dark, I would just kind of smoosh this around a little bit and break it up. Okay. Now also, so that's going to kind of just give me a variety of colors going on there. Then the other thing, like, let me make some more of these. I almost want them darker so that you can see the reaction. I need another little cup or something to put this in. Let's see. Maybe I'll end up adding this. I just want a little more intense. And then I'll just add this to my tray. But I just want to show you. If you take it directly, see my splatters are much darker now. So that's going to be another added layer over those lighter spots that are going to end up being more gray. So I can just take, and you can use any of your inks. You know, if you use your oxide inks, for example, you know how they oxidize, so they're going to change also. So maybe at the end I might actually even use something like that. These are just more, you know, using the spices and that kind of stuff are things that you might have around the house if you don't have all the fancy inks and that kind of thing. So I'm going to clean this now so that I don't end up contaminating some of my other things. So the other thing that I can add to this too is my metallic if I wanted a little bit of metallic. So I can, you know, splatter some of that around. And this is giving you those busier patterns, like I said. And I have a big blob there, but it's kind of nice when your paper kind of shrinks up and wrinkles and that sort of thing. You'll get the metallic and different things kind of settling in cracks. And also I'm going to be putting this onto a garbage bag that maybe I'll wrinkle up to dry, and then that'll add some more creases in there that look like maybe stone or marble or something like that. So you can see, let me move my tray up a little bit so you can see. You can see how because of all the liquid, those are all starting to bleed out a little bit and just kind of make a nice little spider webby sort of pattern. So the other thing that's going to kind of affect this and change it is the citrus. So I'm going to dip this into my lemon juice and kind of go where I have these splatters and see how the lemon juice might also then break that up. Now I am not a scientist, so I don't know, you know, so much about this, but this is what Marcy did. She used the citrus to kind of break up some of those things. So you're not going to really maybe see it all happen here, but you will in the final product. And then the last thing I'm going to go is I'm going to add some salt also on this one. Just sprinkle it around, and it's going to kind of react with all the stuff that's in there. Okay, so now I have one, you know, two done, and these are pretty busy patterns, okay? So the next thing is I'm going to add right on top of this. Now this one, you can see I don't have anything much on these edges because I was trying to kind of keep these from overlapping too much. So that's okay. In the end, I'm going to be adding more liquid to the layers, and so it will soak up into these edges of the paper. So I'm going to go ahead and add another one to the top of this. And over here. And this is the thinner paper, so we're going to see what happens there. And then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to start with my coffee, and we'll just try to make this one a little bit different. And this is kind of just getting your paper to lay down and stick down to my tray into the previous one. So on the back side of this one, I will get some transference from the previous design. It won't be as intense as the one that I actually did the design on, but because this is laying on top, I'm going to get a different design on the back side of this paper than I do on the front side. And again, you can do these individually if you want them to be kind of, you know, intentional and perfect and not have all these what I call happy accidents. You can just design these one at a time and go lay them out to dry and then do the next one. But I think it's kind of fun because you end up, like I said, you get different designs depending on how I do it. Now doing this, adding some spots of my coffee on top, that's going to be a little more intense than when I just spread it everywhere. And that way, those will be, you know, more intense areas. So I've kind of made a mess here already. So I've got my coffee on there, and then now let's do again this just to get me some kind of those gray areas. And again, if I don't want those to be so intense, I could actually even just roll my tray around a little bit. And that gives me a little bit different in my design. And then let me go to my lemon juice. And you can see how it's making some kind of white. I don't know if you can see that very well in there, but it's kind of making some white splatters. And then the other thing you can do is you can take some of your coffee grounds just like this and use a shaker and just sprinkle those around. Now I'm getting kind of bigger blobs here, so you know, maybe I don't want those so big, so I could, you know, spread it around a little bit. Or just, oops. And then maybe come in again with my, just to add a little more liquid where I made some big blobs. Just kind of move those so I don't have so much in one spot. And then if you need to add more liquid, like maybe I don't like how that's too blobby, I could, you know, use this and move it around, make it more evened out. I'm just going to do that kind of on this one paper. So I actually kind of messed up all of my little lemon splatters. And then again, go back with the salt. And this actually, I'm doing quite a bit on this one because I think we'll notice it when I do the reveal at how much that's going to leave texture on my page. We're going to sand all that off, all the salt, afterwards, but it's going to really kind of eat into that paper and leave a texture there. So I'm going to also put some on this side, but maybe I'll put a little less. And then I kind of want a little, break this up a little bit more. And then maybe I'll add some green tea to this side. So let me use this shaker one first. And then I don't know if you can see, it's starting to dissolve a little bit. I have a lot going on there, but I'm gonna just, the other thing I happen to have handy is my spray bottle, just to kind of wet that green tea a little bit more so that it'll dissolve. And I could also do that with my lemon juice if I wanted to, I think too. And just see how all those will react to each other. Okay, my phone storage was full and I had to delete some videos. Okay, so I'm gonna add another paper to this one. And then again, do the same thing, just get some coffee on there so it'll stick down. Okay, and this one again, let's see, we're gonna do something different maybe. Let's see. I'm gonna do some of my metallic. And then again, some of the Black India ink. And again, this one's diluted, so it's really, in the end, not going to show up as much as it looks like now. And you see how it's kind of starting to wrinkle too, and that gives you more interest also, just to have that wrinkling. So next, let's try something different and do one of these. This is going to put quite a bit of color in there because it's kind of this rusty color. But I'm going to just, maybe from really up high, just sprinkle that all over. And it doesn't look like much now, but when that starts to spread out and dissolve, it's going to be more intense. And I think I'll go ahead and I'm going to actually splatter some more coffee to see if I can get some darker coffee splats. And it will help that pigment dissolve. And then again, going back with the lemon juice. And then the salt. Let's use some of this finer salt and see how that works. And then I'm also going to do, because it's kind of in that same color, this is going to turn really yellow. I'm going to use some of these saffron threads. And, you know, saffron threads are really expensive. These my sister brought back from Israel many, many years ago, so they're way past their date. So they're these little threads, so they're actually going to leave a little bit different of a pattern. Okay, and then I think I'm going to go with another layer of paper. And I really liked, when I was looking back at some of mine, I had some really nice gray ones. And I think that is from skipping the coffee or using less coffee and more of this. So I'm going to just see, maybe I need more water. I'm going to go add a little more water to this. Now, if I wanted it more gray and less coffee, I would have used a clean brush, but I didn't want to go find one. So I think I'm just going to add more coffee to the, or more of this black ink to this. So I really kind of contaminated my cups now. So I think what I might do is, once I finish with this, kind of go redo my cups again. But this one is maybe more gray than coffee. And then I think I want to add some more ink again. So I think what I'll do, since my things are getting so contaminated here, I'm going to intensify this again. So I guess the thing is, have enough of these little containers that you don't have to kind of contaminate your things. Now that's going to have some interesting things just from where it has those creases that ran together. That's kind of, that looks really kind of neat. And then salt. And then my lemon juice. And I know that on camera you're probably not really seeing the effects of all of these things, but they are going to show up when they're dry. So let's see, maybe a little bit of turmeric. I really kind of wanted these gray, so I think I'll leave that for now and add another piece of paper first and do the turmeric one. Just so you can see all of the different kind of colors that have come out of these. So I'm going to go back to some coffee. And then with this one, again, some metallic. And I think I'm going to use a spoon to maybe get some bigger spots. So I don't know if you can kind of see what that's doing a little bit. And then my turmeric. Oh, this doesn't have a little thing. I think it does. Oh, good. Okay, I just stole the top off that other one so I could sprinkle. And actually, I ended up sprinkling a lot more than I wanted on that one. Okay. And then maybe just for fun, some green tea on this one too. And I think I'll do the salt first. And then some lemon juice. And I'm kind of thinking, since this is mostly water now, I'm wanting to add a little gold, so I think I actually am going to add some of this gold to that cup. If I do it right on here, it'll be big splotches, so I don't really want to do that. So I've just put a lot of gold in there. And I'll use this and see if I can get there's still some of that copper and bronze in here also, but hopefully it'll come out heavier gold. We'll see. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. This one I kind of want to smoosh around a little bit. Kind of mix those colors, which I know I'm kind of totally messing up my design by doing this. But we're going to fix it. And maybe this will be my favorite one. I'll have a happy accident. I just like the color that it's kind of coming out better now. So I kind of have a mess with that one. So I want to go back and use my lemon juice again to kind of give me my pattern again. Same over here. And then I'm going to add more salt. And that's going to give me much more of a pattern, I think, in the end. Okay. Do I do one more layer? I can't stop myself. It's so addictive. You keep thinking you're finished and then you want to add one more paper on top. So I kind of just continue until I've run out of all my liquids. And again, because I keep cross-contaminating my brush, I'm going to get an unusual color. And it's going to have a little metallic in it, but I like that. So I don't mind doing that. I'm pretty sloppy, as you can see, about how I do things. I'm not really trying to think too much about it. I know I can overthink. But that's when you kind of come out with some fun things. So I'm going to try not to play with this too much. Okay, I'm going to try to control myself. But we'll see. I don't know if that works for me. Okay, that one, maybe a little of the dark stuff. Ooh, I like how those are kind of running. Okay, that looks good. Maybe some, I think you can see this. I'll hold it up and you can see this more. When you use the contrast of this black India ink and the lemon, you see it more. The other ones are more subtle that you're really not going to see until they dry, at least not on camera. Oh, see, this could end up being my best one. I'm going to keep it simple, and I'm just going to put some salt. And I think then you can see more how those are reacting. Okay, so now I am going to make myself stop because I love this one. Okay, so I'm going to take these and go put them to dry. It'll take about 4 hours. And then I'll be back with the next step. Okay, so I'm back and I have my dry papers. Now, this is not 4 hours later. This is actually probably half hour later, if that. I decided, because I've dried them in the past on my plastic garbage bag on the floor, that I would just dry these in the oven because I haven't tried that with this technique. So I thought It probably won't hurt, and we'll just see, because a lot of you might be as impatient as I am and want to dry them faster. So I had my two sides. I kind of have them all stacked here. I don't know. I think they kind of went like this. This is kind of how they were in the tray. So when I checked it, I put my oven at 350 degrees. You could do it much lower for longer, but I was kind of in a hurry. So I went ahead and set it at 350 and then just watched it. These top two dried probably within 10 minutes or so, I guess. I wasn't really paying attention. So I took those off and maybe left them in there another 5 or 10 minutes, and then they were already dry all the way through, so I just went ahead and finished. Okay, so they come off like this. They're very crispy and just grungy with all the salt and stuff, so we have to get that off. So I'm just going to kind of put these to the side and grab one. And all I'm going to use is, this is just a piece of a sponge that has the little scratchy side to it. And I'm hoping that's enough. It's dry, obviously, but I just want to kind of scratch off. And actually, I guess I should show you one before I start scratching up close. So if you can see this up close, you see how the lemon and then the salt reacted to each other and all the other things, and it kind of spread out the inks. They kind of mixed here and there, but you see all that salt kind of baked on to the paper, and that's gonna, once I remove that, it's gonna give us hopefully a nice technique underneath. So I'm gonna scratch some of this off. And then I have some on the other side also, just from the other layer. And you can see this is the side that had some of the turmeric. And so when I sand that, you know, the spice is still kind of sitting on top. It's going to soften that, because, you know, I'm taking this darker color that you see is actually the spice sitting on the top. So when I sand that, it removed all that darker color, so it doesn't look the same, you know, as when you first see it with the, if I can compare it to the one that I have not sanded, you still see all the salt in that. Now, it is a different look, and this is kind of interesting, even when it's all wrinkled. What I might do is, if I can get this just as an experiment, it might be kind of fun to scan this while it still has all the salt on there, because that's a different look than once I remove the salt. You know, the same with here, you see all that dark. So I'm gonna maybe do that. I'm gonna maybe go scan this just to see the difference, because I might like those scanned copies, you know, can be in a digital kit. When it has all this detail, obviously you can't use it like this in your, it's just too much stuff on it, but that is kind of an interesting, that would be an interesting picture, right? So I think I'm going to set this one aside and actually maybe go scan some of these that are interesting before I clean them. So I'm going to go do that and I'll be back. Okay, so here we are. I am back. Now, I ended up not needing to scan all of them. Some of them, it wasn't going to make that much of a difference, but I wanted to show you kind of why I scan them and why you might want to do that. If you don't have a scanner, you can also take a photograph. Sometimes those will even turn out better if you don't have a very good quality scanner. Just take a photo of your design with your camera, and then you can crop it to make it look all evened out and flat if it's kind of at an angle in any way. And then you have that to print out as digitals later on. So I used my scanner to do these, not my phone, not my camera. And I just wanted to show you what I came up with and kind of why I like to do that. So this is the one that I had all the salt on, and now I've removed that. But I'm going to try to get it in here, if you can see without these shadows too much. All that detail, this is now once that salt is removed. So you can see where I had sprayed the citrus, you know, just the acidity from that, and then adding the salt, how it just made different effects, a lot of detail. So all those in between, like in here, all these white voids, those were from the citrus. After I had introduced ink and other things, it would make that kind of spread out. And then this is where the salt was laid, and now it's been removed. So it looks like it's still there, but I've sanded it off. So again, I just used my little sponge dry, the scrubby side, and just went over all of these papers after I scanned them. Now, you might wonder, how are you going to scan these with all this mess? And this is just kind of a little bonus thing. You don't want all this salt and any of the crunchy things to get on your scanner and maybe scratch your glass or anything like that. So you want to be careful. So what I did was I took just a little vacuum. If you have something like this is just a little handheld one, but if you have one that you can put, even your vacuum, that you have a hose, you have an attachment that's soft like this, I just used this and kind of just went over, and anything that was loose that was going to fall off onto my scanner, I removed that. So it still left a lot of the salt that was stuck down pretty good. So you want to kind of just shake off what wants to come off. Then you lay it carefully on your scanner. And then I used, because these were not ironed and flat, they were really wonky. And I wanted to see if maybe some of those rolls even kind of came out in the scan. So I just put it down and then laid a really heavy coffee table sized dictionary on the lid of my scanner after I had closed it. And that way it kind of flattens everything out so that you get a good contact with the scanner camera. So I did that, and then afterwards, once I removed one, I would just make sure I had vacuumed everything off of my scanner glass so that I didn't scratch anything. So it kind of took some time, but you want to just try to protect everything as you're going along. So don't just flop it on there and move it around and risk scratching something. So I went ahead and did the ones that I thought would come out, you know, the more detailed. And so just for fun, I printed the first one onto fabric. So I still have it on my sticker backing. I think I posted a video already on printing on fabric with bubble jet. So I treated the fabric ahead so that it won't run once I introduce any more liquid. And then I put the fabric onto sticker backing. You can also use freezer paper. I just like to do it this way. And now I'm having trouble getting this apart. I just wanted to show you that it's on fabric. That's why it's kind of nice to scan your artwork, because maybe you want to print it on fabric and put it on something else. So you can see I'm not going to peel this completely off, but this was just done onto some cotton fabric. So I didn't adjust the color or anything when I did this one, and you can tell that this is my original, and this is how it came out with me not, this is just for my scan without adjusting any color or anything. So you can tell there's quite a difference. The one thing you can do is, if you wanted to get closer to this, or even just something else that you like, maybe this is too dark, you can adjust the color. I duplicate my scan on my computer, make a copy so you don't ruin your original. And then this was just done on plain copy paper, but I made some adjustments to it. So it's different from the one that wasn't adjusted at all. But I was trying on my computer screen, these two actually looked a lot closer to each other. So it's different when you're working on your computer. Everybody's computer screen is maybe a different brand or that kind of thing. The color you look at in real life, when I was trying to hold this next to what was on my screen, they ended up looking a lot alike because that's what I'm just visually seeing from the screen. But then to go from your screen to actual printed version doesn't always look the same. So that's just how it works. And you can, try adjusting things. I did in this one, I adjusted the sharpness so that you could see the detail of that salt more. So I'm sorry, I have a shadow up here. But you can see kind of the detail of all that salt because I did the scan before I knocked it all off. So that was just kind of a fun thing to do. When I go to scan this one now, this new scan would look different from this original scan because this had all the salt on it. And this is after I scrubbed everything off. So I just wanted to show a couple. This is one that I adjusted the color again a little bit different even than this one. So it's kind of fun because you can, you have the texture of the pattern that you created, but you can change the color up a lot just by changing the settings under tools in your computer. The other thing I printed on just for fun is I printed on a piece of vellum, and I have the white paper here just so you can see what it looked like. So depending on what you want to use these for, and this is where you can just get really creative, it's always fun to scan your artwork, even if it's this type of coffee stained artwork, just to have all of these textures to use for backgrounds and things later on. So I've gone ahead, like I said, and scanned all the ones that I wanted to before I removed all the grunge, the salt and that sort of thing. But now I can go back if I want and scan all of these, and I'll try to do some little close-ups here so you can kind of see the detail. And you can kind of see the texture. It's really subtle sometimes maybe, but this I can actually feel this texture on my paper just from the different things I used. And you can see that this, what looks like shadow, is actually using that black ink and kind of graze it out a little bit. So that's the back side of this one because I had it laying on something else. And actually this is probably what it was laying on. I'm not sure if these are in order or not, but this is the one that had the turmeric on it. And you won't be able to see this probably on camera, but if I can get in here kind of close, but you can see the texture of those papers. So I don't know if this will do it justice, but they're just gorgeous in real life. All the texture that they have and just the different colors where things kind of settle with like watermarks. But even in between, I don't know if you can see this, you'll see texture on parts and then less of that texture on some of these other areas. So it's just a lot of detail that I can see that I don't know if it's showing up very well on camera. And then the back side of this one I really like, has more just that kind of gray, those gray colors. So this was the top and this was the bottom side. And then this would have been the top side of one. Again, you're not probably going to really see this, but there is a ton of texture in here. And again, that texture is achieved by putting that acidity and the salt and the inks, all and the coffee, all of those different things working together are creating all of this texture. And I really can see, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but along this edge is a lot of metallic, just a little bit of sparkle that I know the metallics just don't show up very well on camera. And then this would be the back side. So this was laying on something that had more of that, the pink. I'm thinking this was when I was using one of the sprinkle, maybe this one, the pigments. This is one that has the green tea, a lot of that on it. And then this would have been the back side, which it's not going to show up much on camera. It's really subtle, but there is actually a lot going on this one too, just for kind of an aged looking paper. I really love this one, and I almost think this might be the back side of one, and I really like how you get all these outlined watermarks from the coffee. So again, when I was referring in my video that I had made that someone asked me to do this, I was calling them busier patterns. So instead of just your normal coffee stain where it just makes something look aged, you can get a lot of pattern and texture by using these techniques. So again, the more splatters and sprinkles, obviously, the busier the pattern is going to be. So you can also do these with less of the splatter, you know, making them more monochromatic, and you'll have more subtle things like some of these other back sides, you know, that might be a little bit more subtle. So this is one, I think this was the other side. Where did it go now? This one would have been laying on top of this, that sort of thing. So this one has some of the red transferred on it. It would have been the back side. And again, this one has a lot of the green tea on it. This is really pretty too. I don't know if they're coming out. This would have been the back side. There's a lot of white because it just didn't get soaked. It didn't get soaked in when it was laying on it, but I really like this side. And this has some of this bright yellow. These are from the saffron threads. So that's why it looks like a wormy kind of little line there. So just some fun. This one was mostly different kinds of coffee where I sprinkled the coffee on. Super grungy. And I don't know if you watch Louisa Heinzel. I love her channel. I'll put a link down below. She's one that I love, her grungy taste, her style. She has a specific style. And I can see using these papers and doing, I love this side. All of this. It's really pretty. And tons of texture. Again, I don't know if you'll be able to see if I get this in there really close. This is all texture that you can actually feel. So even if you were to introduce other things later on, like if you were to try to drip some ink, it's going to go into these cracks and move around because this kind of feels like sandpaper. So anyway, I was mentioning Louisa Heinzel. I really like her style, and I think these papers would be great to do a whole journal and do them in kind of her style, where if you've seen, she'll actually, after she's put a book together, use a hammer and actually pound the edges of the pages just to grunge it up even more. This one ended up really nice. I don't know if you can see. It has a lot of wrinkles in it. I've ironed them out about as flat as I can get it, but it still has a lot of wrinkles. So this one would actually be really pretty to scan now, just because I think it'll show those up even in a scan. And then this one had a lot of the turmeric on it. This one, I think this might be the one that I had put lots of things on, and then I ended up smearing it all and then adding a few more things. So it's actually probably more yellow than it looks like on camera. But anyway, so these are in a gray side that I really like. Okay, so this is the little test that I just did in this video. So now I have a bunch more to add to my pile of grungy papers. So I'll need to scan some of these now so that I have those saved too. And I look forward to maybe putting together a journal using all of these. I think that would be fun. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. It's made me want to maybe do a couple more coffee staining videos with other techniques. So I'll have to work on that. In the meantime, have a great rest of your day. Now go make something. Bye.